By the time this video ends, you may never look at the global economy the same way again. Because right now, in a narrow stretch of water between Iran and Oman, a geopolitical confrontation is unfolding that could shake every country on Earth. Every day, roughly 20 million barrels of oil, about 1/5 of the world's supply, pass through this single corridor. But if that flow is disrupted, even briefly, the consequences could ripple through fuel prices, food costs, financial markets, and entire national economies. What happens in this small passage of water may soon determine how expensive energy becomes and how stable the global economy remains. Gas prices, food prices, shipping costs, stock markets, all of them are connected to a single choke point most people have never seen. The Strait of Hormuz. If that waterway closes, even temporarily, the consequences could be massive. Right now, about 20 million barrels of oil pass through that narrow corridor every single day, representing roughly 1/5 of global oil consumption. That means 1 out of every 5 barrels of oil used anywhere in the world depends on ships passing through this tiny passage. And today, that passage sits in the middle of a war. One very prominent question we should ask ourselves is how this crisis started. The current escalation began after a series of military strikes between the United States, Israel, and Iran. Retaliatory attacks followed. Energy infrastructure was targeted, and Iran threatened something that has haunted global markets for decades: closing the Strait of Hormuz. That threat alone was enough to send oil prices soaring. At one point during the crisis, crude oil surged close to $120 per barrel, levels not seen since the early shocks following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Markets reacted instantly. Stocks fell. Energy companies surged. Governments began emergency meetings. Because everyone understands the same thing. The global economy runs on oil. Again, you might be wondering why this tiny waterway matters so much. The Strait of Hormuz is only about 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. But through that corridor flows energy from some of the world's most important oil producers: Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, Iran, United Arab Emirates, Qatar. Together, these countries ship tens of millions of barrels of oil and gas through this single route. More than 20% of global petroleum consumption passes through this choke point. And here's the real problem. Most of that oil has no alternative route. Even with pipelines and storage facilities, experts estimate that only 3.5 to 5.5 million barrels per day can be bypassed through the strait. That leaves roughly 14 million barrels per day dependent on this single maritime passage. If it shuts down, the global energy system immediately feels the shock. Let's look at the first economic shock: oil prices. Energy markets react faster than politics. Within days of the conflict escalating, crude prices surged dramatically. Analysts warned that oil could spike above $100 or even $150 per barrel if the strait remained blocked. Why does that matter? Because oil prices ripple through everything: gasoline, air travel, shipping, manufacturing, agriculture, every truck that delivers food, every plane that flies passengers, every cargo ship crossing the ocean runs on fuel. When oil rises, everything becomes more expensive. The second shock: global inflation. Central banks around the world have been trying to reduce inflation. But energy shocks quickly reverse that progress. Higher oil prices mean higher transportation costs, higher fertilizer costs, higher electricity costs, which ultimately leads to higher food prices. Economists warn that prolonged disruption could push the world back towards stagflation, slow growth combined with rising prices. That combination is one of the most dangerous economic environments any country can face. The third shock: Asian economies will feel the impact. The countries most exposed to a disruption of Hormuz are in Asia. About 84% of the oil passing through the strait is shipped to Asian markets, especially China, India, Japan, and South Korea. These economies rely heavily on imported energy. If shipments slow or stop, they face immediate shortages. That could impact factories, electric grids, transportation networks. And because Asia produces a massive share of the world's manufactured goods, disruptions there can cascade into global supply chains. The fourth shock: shipping and global trade. More than 80% of world trade moves by sea. When conflict threatens shipping routes, insurance costs skyrocket. Ships avoid dangerous areas. Cargo gets delayed. Freight prices increase. Even if oil continues flowing, the risk alone can increase global transportation costs, and those costs eventually reach consumers. The fifth shock: financial markets. Markets hate uncertainty. During the crisis, analysts warned that global stocks could drop sharply if the conflict escalates. Some forecasts suggested the S&P 500 could fall around 10% if oil supply disruptions continue. Investors move money into safe assets. Gold rises. Government bonds surge. Energy stocks climb. Meanwhile, industries that depend on fuel, airlines, logistics companies, and manufacturing will face higher operational costs. Airline tickets will skyrocket, and this will shape how many people and companies do business. What happens if the war escalates? If the conflict between the United States and Iran moves beyond limited strikes and escalates into a broader confrontation, the first reactions will likely appear in global energy markets. Tensions in the region surrounding the Strait of Hormuz have historically sent immediate shockwaves through oil prices because traders understand how fragile the global energy supply chain can be when a critical shipping route is threatened. If additional military action occurs, or if Iran attempts to disrupt or close the Strait of Hormuz, markets could react within hours. Oil prices would likely surge sharply as buyers rush to secure supplies before potential shortages develop. Even the perception that shipments might slow down can trigger panic buying in energy markets. Governments in major economies, such as the United States, Japan, and several European countries might respond by releasing crude oil from their strategic petroleum reserves in an effort to stabilize supply and calm markets. These emergency reserves are designed for moments exactly like this, when global disruptions threaten to reduce the flow of oil to international buyers. Shipping companies would also begin adjusting their operations. Some vessels might avoid the region entirely, while others would face higher insurance costs and increased security risks. These changes alone can slow deliveries and drive up transportation costs, even if oil continues to move through the region. Yet the deeper challenge lies in the sheer volume of energy that normally passes through this corridor. Replacing millions of barrels of daily oil shipments is not something the global market can easily do in the short term. If the disruption lasts for weeks or months, the ripple effects could spread rapidly through the global economy. Analysts warn that such a scenario could lead to energy shortages in vulnerable markets, renewed spikes in global inflation, slower economic growth in many countries, and heightened volatility in financial markets. In simple terms, what begins as a geopolitical conflict in one region could quickly evolve into a worldwide economic crisis that affects households, industries, and governments far beyond the battlefield. Now, let's look at the global reality. The modern global economy runs on energy, and that energy must move constantly. Oil is not just a commodity sitting in storage tanks. It is the fuel that keeps factories operating, airplanes flying, cargo ships moving across oceans, and trucks delivering food and goods to millions of cities every day. When energy flows smoothly through global supply routes, the The system works quietly in the background. But when those flows are threatened, the entire structure of the world economy begins to feel the pressure almost immediately. Factories across Asia depend heavily on oil shipped from the Middle East to power manufacturing plants and generate electricity from massive industrial zones. European economies, many of which import a significant portion of their energy needs, rely on stable supplies to keep industries running and homes heated. In the United States, consumers may feel thousands of miles removed from the Persian Gulf, yet every increase in crude oil prices eventually appears at the gas pump, affecting transportation costs, grocery prices, and household budgets. Energy sits at the foundation of modern life, which is why a single narrow passage in the Persian Gulf holds such enormous global importance. The Strait of Hormuz is not just another shipping route. It is one of the most critical arteries of the global energy system. Through this corridor passes a massive share of the world's oil supply, carried by tankers moving day and night between producing nations and the markets that depend on them. For decades, military planners and economic strategists have warned that this waterway represents one of the most sensitive pressure points in the global economy. It is geographically narrow, strategically vulnerable, and responsible for transporting a significant portion of the energy that powers modern civilization. Any disruption there does not stay local for long. It quickly echoes through financial markets, supply chains, and everyday life across the planet. Right now, that pressure point sits in the middle of a war. If diplomacy calms the situation, markets will stabilize. But if escalation continues, the consequences may spread far beyond the Middle East. Because when energy supply shocks hit the global economy, the effects are rarely contained. The story unfolding today is not just about military strategy or regional politics. It's about the fragile system that powers the modern world. A system where millions of barrels of oil travel through a corridor only a few miles wide, and where a conflict in one region can ripple through gas stations, supermarkets, and stock markets across the planet. If you want to understand the forces shaping the global economy in real time, this is one story you cannot ignore.